Hello, everybody. It is Liam Murphy, aka the Blazing Bishop, back with another edition of Blazing Bishop Breakdowns. Today, we're going to be looking at a game played at the Cairns Cup in 2020, a tournament played in St. Louis between the top female players in the world. Playing with the white pieces is going to be Ju Wenjun, who is the Women's World Champion, a Grandmaster, versus Carissa YIP, an American player who is an IM. In fact, she was the youngest women's IM in history. And let's take a look at the game. So Ju plays e4, Carissa plays e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. This signals that they're playing the Ruy Lopez. And here, a6 is played, bishop a4, and then Carissa plays g6, playing the fianchetto defense edition, which is a bit unusual for the Ruy Lopez, but is a totally fine way to play. Classical thinking may be that this bishop can already move on this diagonal, so why invest a turn to fianchetto it, but it's totally fine way to play. And Ju plays d4, trying to open up the center. Carissa captures, and then c3 is played. So Ju, if she had her way, she would like to have Carissa capture again on c3 to develop her knight to b3. But Carissa doesn't do that. She instead just develops her piece. She doesn't want to spend turns developing the pieces of the opponents. Ju captures back, and then Carissa plays b5, a very normal move in the Ruy Lopez, trying to kick this bishop around. Perhaps you want to fianchetto your light squared bishop on b7 at a later date. Bishop b3 is played, knight e7, just developing our pieces, d5. And this move pushes in the center and gives us a knight a kick. Black probably doesn't want to fianchetto the bishop anymore if they're going to be staring at this kind of like granite wall structured. But it does open up this long diagonal for Carissa's dark squared bishop, which is definitely her best minor piece now. Carissa plays knight a5. Usually you don't want to put your knights on the rim of the board unless it is for a tactical reason or you want to maneuver the piece. Here, the knight would love to trade itself for the bishop, getting rid of one of the long-range pieces. It's always easier to open up a position where bishops are better versus keep a position closed where knights are usually preferred. And the knight can sometimes jump into c4 if she'd like. Ju continues to develop pieces with bishop d2, kind of forcing the capture of the bishop on b3, which Carissa wants to do anyways. And Ju captures back with her queen. She wants to keep her pawns undoubled and to develop her queen in the game. Carissa plays c5, looking to gain space on the queen side of the board. Note that white could have captured using en passant here by capturing on c6, but there's a couple moves Carissa could do here. She could take with the knight if she wished, or perhaps taking with the pawn would even be better, opening up the queen on the d file. And so Ju does not do that. She instead puts her bishop on c3, looking to offset this excellent bishop of Carissa. And Carissa plays f6, kind of an unusual looking move here. Usually you do not want to move your f pawn in the game, and if Carissa were to castle, she is lining her king up with the queen on this diagonal. But I believe this move is played for a couple reasons. One, she really does not want to trade her dark squared bishop quite yet. It's a good piece. She definitely doesn't want to do something like bishop takes c3, either allowing the queen to hit with tempo on this rook or to get the knight in the game for Ju. And then also putting the pawn at f6, it does attack the square e5, so it prevents white from placing a knight or bishop on that square for now. Ju plays a3, and Carissa plays d6. So really putting a clamp on the e5 square, saying that square is mine. But notice that when you push pawns, usually you gain a bit of space, but you leave behind holes. So the hole in white's position seems to be e4 and c6 to me. These squares are squares that cannot be attacked by pawns at any time. But if white can't get a piece on the holes, it doesn't really matter always if you have weak squares. So like this knight would love to be able to get into the e6 square, but it's not really clear how white can accomplish that because Carissa is attacking all these key squares. And then Ju plays h4. So notice that Ju is not castled, neither has Carissa yet. And so h4 is saying, if you're going to castle, I might try to pawn storm you, not even castle, and try to open up my rook. Carissa castles anyways, and Ju completes her development with knight d2 of her minor pieces. And Carissa plays queen e8. Again, this might be an unusual move if you're not, if you're a little bit newer to chess, but when you think of the queen, you have to think about the diagonals she can go to. So not only the, not only the files that she can go on, but Chris is basically saying, I don't see a future for my queen on c7 or b6 right now. And so by putting on e8, perhaps it could go to f7. Perhaps she just wants to get the bishop to d7. Or perhaps she wants it on the e file, especially lined up with the king here. Maybe trying to force white to castle and pick a side. White does castle, not liking her king lined up with Chris's queen. And bishop d7 is played, getting her last minor piece off the back rank, trying to let these rooks be connected at a later date. Queen c2, bit of a maneuvering of the pieces. Rook c8, improving the rook, lining it up with the queen. b3 is played. And h6. So whenever they're moving like pawns one square, they're slowly pushing forward their space. Like Karpov used to say, you can be like the boa constrictor when you have a good position, where you just improve your position and you just take away square after square after square, and you squeeze your opponent off the board until it chokes. Like that's how a boa constrictor eats food. a4 is played. And Carissa decides, actually, I need my rook back on the a file. And captures, takes on a8, queen takes a8, and rook a1. So I would say at this point, white is a little bit better after queen b7 because there's only one fully open file on this chessboard. That would be the a file, and white is in control of it right now. Queen a2 is played to prevent black from playing rook a8 because if white just did a random move like, king h1, well, then black would probably play something like rook a8 and try to offset white's advantage of having the a file. So queen a2 was played because now they attack the square twice, so you cannot play rook a8. And knight c8 is played. Now, the reason why knight c8 is played is because black probably does not want white to invade on the 7th rank with a move like queen a7. So it stops the queen from getting into a7, and perhaps the knight wants to improve. If we go back to the knight on e7, this piece is not that great. Is it going to go here? No. Is it going to go here? No. Is it going to go here? No. So she's going to get a better future for this piece, perhaps with this maneuver. Knight c8 is played. Knight e1. Again, maneuvering of the knights. Kind of looks funny when knights are maneuvered sometimes because sometimes they go backwards. And a little trick about improving your knights is first you want to visualize what square you want them to go to, and then you find the path to make it happen. b4 is played, giving the bishop a kick and opening up some squares for her light squared bishop. Bishop b2, bishop b5 is played. So now white is maybe a little bit more cramped up in here. Black has made their light squared bishop a much better piece now, seeing a ton of squares in white's camp. Knight c2, improving our pieces. Bishop d3, invading the position, giving the knight a hit. Knight e3, queen e7, a bit of shuffling of the pieces going on here. Knight b6 finally. Queen a1. I like to call this like the bow and arrow when this queen and bishop are lined up on a battery, but the queen is in the back, looking to blast through sometimes. But rook a8 is played, and so the queen unfortunately cannot stay on the a file for Ju. And now Carissa is getting a bit of an advantage here, but she has won the a file back. Queen c1 is played, and you can see how this bishop is annoying. It's taking all these squares away from white's pieces. h5, improving space. Knight c4, captures, and then rook a2. So now black is definitely in control of this game. They have invaded on the opponent's 7th rank. That would be the 2nd rank. And this rook is going to be all sorts of tactical headaches for white. Perhaps the queen wants to come to a7. It's not really clear what white does. They have this weak backwards e-pawn currently that, they can defend with f3, but then their dark squares are very weak around their king. They can never really get e5 in because these pawns are putting a grip on the position. So it's not really clear what white does here. Ju goes with g3. King h7. It's kind of a prophylactic move. Maybe stopping any problems of checks at a later date and defending this weak g6 pawn. Knight d2, a bit of maneuvering. Bishop h6. Improving the bishop. This is common when the f pawn is moved in a fianchetto structure where, okay, I don't see a future on this diagonal. Let's check out this diagonal. And now the bishop is putting the knight into a pin. Kind of forcing f4 here. Looking to gain space, but probably mostly trying to offset the bishop. Queen a7 is played, taking full control of the a file, putting a queen and rook battery. Knight c4 is played. And here, Carissa shuffles the queen a little bit more. And then rook e3, really putting this bishop to a test. What does it want to do? Because really it has only one option. Can't go here, can't go here, can't go here, can't go here, can't go here. So it just has to capture the knight. And she gets rid of the knight. The pawn captures back. And now Carissa has earned a passed b pawn. In fact, a protected passed pawn. Some of the strongest pawns in chess. We call it protected passed pawn because the pawn on c5 keeps it safe. Queen g4 is played. And queen g4 is a good move by Carissa, but she had an even stronger move here, which he does play at a later date. But computer really wants her to play bishop takes f4, no time to waste. And then the game could have gone something like maybe g takes f4, queen g4 check, king f2, queen takes f4. And the point kind of here is that she's going to be able to gobble up this material. This bishop is in a pin, and you can never really do something like rook f3 to give your king some protection because queen takes c1 would hit the board where the bishop is pinned and no longer protecting the queen. But she plays queen g4, and here white plays king h1, which does not fix the problem, and Carissa does spot bishop takes f4 now. So she does bishop takes f4, the pawn captures, she's gobbling up material. So she's down a bishop, but she's going to get a ton of pawns for her troubles, doing some checks, lining up the king just right. And now this queen is a bit overloaded. It's defending this rook. It wants to give this rook a kick. It can't do both jobs, so it comes to queen b1. And let's pause here. What would you guys do? Would you take the rook? Well, no. First, you got to do the intermediate move of what Carissa did is rook takes b2. Then the queen captures, and only then do you pick up the rook. Because if you just take the rook to start with, well, then the white queen is going to take the black rook, and they're going to have a bishop still on the board. So Carissa first captures the bishop, the queen takes back, and the queen takes. Okay, so we've reached a position where Carissa has 6 pawns versus Ju's 3 pawns, and then queens and kings. If Carissa can force a queen trade, this is a winning position for black. When you have extra pawns and you have a king, it's usually a win for the other side. And even without forcing a queen trade, this is still winning for black. But it can be difficult because the key here is you have to find shelter for your king. You have to stop the white queen from checking your king forever. Otherwise, you can get some draws by perpetual check. So queen takes f6 hits the board. Carissa picks up the e4 pawn, king h2. And now she doesn't even waste any time taking the c4 pawn. She doesn't want to allow all these checks. She likes her queen here. She's just saying, I'm too quick, b3, what are you going to do about it? I'm trying to get another queen. So b3, and Ju does some checks. Carissa marches up her king. Queen f8, king g5. And it's all about trying to find some shelter for the king. That's her main goal here. King e5. Ju is doing some checks. She's running out of time here, though. Running away, running away. And now, note that you cannot take this queen here because, remember, when your king is behind a passed pawn, it is too slow this pawn would become a queen, making Carissa a very sad king here. So instead of trading the queens, she plays queen f5, hoping that Ju would trade queens, and therefore she would have the passed pawn that would queen, and white's pawns cannot advance. Ju instead takes a pawn, and here Carissa does excellent work, just forcing the king just right here with the checks, forcing the king in the position she wants the king to be in, because here black plays the winning move. Can you guys spot it? Did you say queen g3, forking the king and queen for a trade? Because Ju did resign here. However, the game could have gone queen takes queen, of course. The black king takes. And now it's a race that Carissa's just going to win. d6, b2, d7, b1 with check is a very key detail. In fact, it would be checkmate. But even if not checkmate, this queen could get back in time to stop the d pawn from queening. So what an excellent game from Carissa YIP, a former chess kid herself, only 17 years old, taking down the 30-year-old Ju Wenjun of China, the women's world champion. I hope you guys all had a great day. Make sure you hit that subscribe and like button. Goodbye.